Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio program, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder. And our program today is about the subject of decisions. Making decisions, the ones that can change your life and the ones you've already made that are preventing that from happening.
It's an interesting phrase, making decisions, as if you're designing and then building something. A decision. Well, we really are. This is an effort. This is an applied skill to make a decision. Now, many of our decisions are really easy to make. It's almost like you already know what to do. We're going to talk a little about habitual decisions in the program today. Habits that we just fall into naturally and normally. Maybe that need review often, and yet we may not be doing that review. We forget to make a decision because some things become habitual. But certainly, you can consider those areas of your life where there are day-to-day really significant decisions, important decisions that need to be made, manufactured, really. Sometimes very difficult decisions that have an enormous impact on your life. Sometimes it's a this or a that. Sometimes it's a choice from a list of things. And sometimes it's like, where do I go? I have no idea where to begin. We're going to talk about all of that today. And I think you're going to find some practical tools and some real-world approaches to problem solving and decision-making and what we have for you today.
You know, it starts with, like, what do I do for my first step? I mean, when I have this problem or this situation that needs a decision, I have to make a commitment. I have to pick from choices. I have to say, that's the way I'm going to do it. The thing I really have to know is, what's the outcome I'm looking for? I mean, I can't make a decision unless I know what kind of result I want to create. And then once I know that and I make a decision, then I need to just know, what do I do next? What's my first choice? And it really comes down to, like, breaking the possibilities into manageable sizes. You know, you can't choose from 360 degrees of possibilities. You don't know where to go, and you could go in any direction. So you have to sort of get a sense of, what direction do I need to go to make this decision? So the first thing you might do is take a look at this situation that you're facing, this decision you need to make about something, and ask yourself simply, is this a problem that needs to be solved, or is this a feeling that needs to be healed? And I think that's a wonderful entry point to the process of solving problems and making decisions.
Sure, because every thought has some emotional affect, and really strong feelings usually come out of some kind of thought process and then lead to another thought process. So we're acknowledging here there's a interaction or an intersection, a crossover between thoughts and feelings. It's pretty hard to consider having one without the other. But nevertheless, we can favor one over the other by considering, is this something about the world that I have to decide? The external environment around me, in other words, other people, or circumstances and events out there in the world. Those problems are better approached with mental analysis, with logic and reasoning, rational thinking, for example. Whereas a problem that becomes more personal, this usually is coming now out of a stronger emotional affect, and this you may want to consider more a feeling to be healed than a problem to be solved. Is it a matter of semantics? Well, not really. It's a matter of determining, how am I going to approach this? Solving a problem mentally and healing a hurt feeling emotionally are really two different kinds of problems.
Yeah, for example, if I'm dealing with feeding someone and I know the person they're in the hospital and they're a diabetic, then I use logic and reasoning and analysis to determine what's the right food to give them. When I'm looking at feeding myself, then what am I in the mood for? What is my heart desire? What are my taste buds tingling for? It's a completely different kind of way of solving the problem. If my health is at issue, of course, then I would choose to not eat certain things. But if I'm trying to determine the answer to the question, what do I feed someone in scenario A, they're in the hospital with diabetes, it's a totally different kind of situation than how do I feed person B? Like, what do I want to make my wife for dinner tonight? Or, what do I want? Then it's more like, what would make her happy? What would make her remember previous meals I'd made or previous times we'd gone out and had. There's all kinds of other reasons, heart kind of reasons, that you choose to solve a problem that way. Some problems, external problems, like I'm going to the DMV and I'm taking the test to get my driver's license. That I can't use my emotions to solve that problem. That's got to be stuff I learned and memorized. But when it comes down to like, well, I really don't like this job, I want to find a better career for myself, then I can't solve that problem logically. I can't look in the want ads and see. What I must do is go inside myself and ask myself, what would make me happy? What would make me fulfilled? What would make me satisfied? What do I love? What do I want to do? If the question is about my heart, what does my heart desire? What do I want? Then I have to go inside me to find the answer to that question. And of course, that involves, as we always say, going to paradise, going to a place where your external world sort of goes under the background for a while, and you close your eyes and you go inside and you, with some deep breaths, focus in on the mind, the heart that's coming through you, and pay attention inside instead of outside. Some problems you need to look outside to solve, the problems that are outside, but there's a lot of problems and decisions that need to be made based on what the heart desires, not what would be logical, not what would be rational, but rather what would be most wonderful.
I recall as a young man an interest I had in how therapy works, mental health, how that healing works, because I had a pretty good take, even as a kid, on physical medicine. They had pills and powders and potions, and if that didn't work, they had surgery, right? So drug it or knife it out. But mental health, that seemed so arcane to me, so magical. What could be happening in talk therapy? It would make a difference. It would heal a heart, right? Mend a broken heart, or just lift someone out of sadness and depression. How can talking do that? Well, it turns out that the best therapists are the ones that do more listening than talking. The idea of creating rapport and helping the client feel really understood is important. But it's a process that leads, in turn, to the client understanding their feeling, and therein is the magic. What heals? Well, we know love heals, but what is the quality of love in this case that most likely accounts for healing broken hearts? It's the quality of love called understanding. It's the aha experience, that wonderful lid-lifting, oh, wait a minute, you mean, oh, what? Well, no wonder then. And it's just this light suddenly spills into the top of your head. Sometimes it's a mini burst, and sometimes it's this explosive eureka of awareness, realization, revelation, or inspiration. It's intuitive in nature. It's not deductive or logical like the mental reasoning we're going to talk about. Quite the contrary. It's more of again, it could be a gentle dawning, or it could be this explosive vision of something that you begin to realize was there all along. You just didn't see it. It's like groping around in a dark attic, and someone suddenly finds a lamp and turns on the light, and you go, oh, here's what I was looking for. It was right here all along. I just didn't see it. And that understanding is what heals the broken heart. It's what resolves anger into hurt, and hurt into confusion, which once realized ceases to be. Or any other negative feeling. It's the realization, it's facing the fear, taking ownership of it. You have to let go of the victimization or the limited belief that this was simply done to you and they're to blame. Take some ownership, some responsibility. This emotion is, after all, your response to the situation. It's very personal. It's really about you. And then, either with the guidance of a counselor or a therapist or on your own, reflecting in calm, relaxed states of mind. Go to paradise. Use your focused passion skills here to reflect, meditate, calm those emotions, and then they reveal themselves to you. And you understand, and the aha is the magic.
Yeah, it's a matter of being willing to step back from your day-to-day autopilot existence and take a look at the decisions that you've made and aren't making anymore because you think the ones you made are just fine. It's exploring life in a different way. We had a friend of ours over today who was telling us a story about another friend who about a decade ago in her late teens was eventually diagnosed with lupus, but it was like all kinds of medical problems, and doctors said this and doctors other contradicted her and said that, and it was a horrible experience, and she just got so fed up with Western medicine that she just made a decision that I don't like Western medicine anymore. I'm going to go heal myself with other ways. So she sought out, herbal medicine and acupuncture and all kinds of herbal alternatives, that many of which were quite good, and she actually healed herself and cured herself a great deal and had a long remission, and then with that decision that the Western medicine is wrong and this alternative is right. But it came a point where she went back into getting sick again, and it got so sick that the alternatives weren't really working, and so now she had to remake the decision. Well, I'm to the point where I've got to let Western medicine at least diagnose me. I've got to, maybe they don't have the right treatment for me, but I'm not finding the right diagnosis here. And so a decision made with passion, with great emotion and out of great pain is a really hard decision to change. But, life and death puts us in face of that. Sometimes there's decisions we made in our lives, really powerful and really important ones, about our religion, about our politics, or about our morals and our ethics, our social codes, what's okay to lie about, and sometimes we made decisions a long time ago that really need to be explored now that we're more mature, now that we're more awake, now that we're more willing and able to be better human beings than we were able or willing to be when we were younger. Exploring the decisions made and remaking decisions may be the most powerful thing you can do to change your life.
And again, the more personal the issue, the more likely you're going to find success in working with the emotional nature rather than the logical nature. Again, do I trust my head or my heart? If the two are really conflicted, your thoughts are saying one thing logically, and yet emotionally you're getting pulled in a very different direction, maybe even the opposite direction. Well, the more personal it is, the more intimate it is, I'd say the better off you are relying on the emotional nature first. But Steve would be the first to jump in and say, always check with the other side.
Absolutely. If it's an issue of what do I want to do with my life, what do I want? Want's got to be an emotional thing. There's no logic to want. Everybody wants different things depending on who they are. So what do I want to do, or what do I want to be? Definitely you have to go to your heart. The question is really, what does my heart desire? You have to go to your heart. But if your heart comes up with something, and then once you explore it with logic and it doesn't work, the logical mind says that's great, but you could never make a living at that. There's just no way that's going to be financially viable. Then you have to step back and say, okay, what would feel almost as good but would be financially viable? I know the direction I need to take. Maybe I can't go be a street artist, and draw on the sidewalks and make a living that way. But wait a minute, now that leads me in a direction at least. So you follow your heart, and when your head says no, it doesn't mean go the opposite direction. It means course correct and find something close that doesn't defy logic. You don't change the direction that your heart says you need to go. What you do is you modify the direction so that it becomes both what your heart desires and is also logical as well.
Often it's do this in addition to rather than instead of.
Right. Sometimes it's make this your hobby instead of your career. Sometimes it's do this part-time before you get to do it full-time. Sometimes it's
find a day job.
Whatever. But what's most important is the journey toward what you want the most is the happiest of all the journeys. So at least having it in your mind what your heart desires the most. The journey towards what's most logical for you to do is not necessarily the happy journey. It might be, it might not be, but the journey toward what you want the most is always the happiest of journeys. So for that reason alone, you want to choose to move toward what your heart desires.
I realized slowly that I'd made a mistake in choosing journalism as a career. In fact, I need to say that better, because I don't know that it was really a mistake. It just wasn't enough.
There would have been a better decision you could have made.
Well, it took me to where it took me,
Right.
in my interest in personal development and the potential that human beings have. I thought I was interested in the current events of government and politics and late-breaking news. But what I was really interested in, it turned out, and what really mattered to me, is what people care about. And in the 6 W's that you learn in journalism, who, what, where, why, when, and how has the W on the back end, so it still counts. The question that never is answered or even addressed in journalism, or I should say rarely addressed in journalism, is the why. And why is the shortest and most powerful question there is. Why? Ask yourself, why do I care? What do I care about is important. That you care at all could be fascinating. But to go deeper and deeper, and to peel away the layers and allow yourself to, again, take your insight toward ultimate understanding, toward that realization of why I feel this hurt, whatever it happens to be, this emotional upset, this disturbance. Why? What does it mean? What does it remind me of? And when you do this in paradise, which is our term for the alpha brainwave level, for any meditation or contemplation, whatever your technique, watching breath, visualizing, counting down, matters not. Go to those relaxed levels, and a question like why gets answered by the intuition. That's the light of the aha, oh, I see now, that we're talking about. And that's how you heal a heart. And if the problem's really personal, that's the place you want to go. Try that.
That's the place you have to go, because you really can't figure out your heart. You know, it's not that it's illogical, it's non-logical. Logic does not apply to heart. It's a matter of going back to the initial question, is this a problem that needs to be solved? Is it something that I can analytically work out? Is it something I can use trial and error or the scientific method or learning from my mistakes or getting guidance and wisdom and finding a mentor? Or is it something that I need to intuit? Is it something that I need to just let myself understand about me? You know, if the question is about stuff I want, like career choices, or is this the right person to marry, or what's the right way to raise my children? I mean, when it's huge questions like that, when it's personal, there's no one right answer. There's your right answer. Then you can't find your right answer in a book or in anywhere other than inside yourself and what resonates. You can read in a book an answer, and then your heart goes, yeah, this is the right answer for me. But it's not the book that you have to listen to. It's the heart going, yeah, this is the right answer for me. So in so many times, people are faced with situations where they're trying to figure out the answer. They're trying to logically deduce the answer to questions that really are strongly desiring the heart input, not the head input. It's not that your logical mind isn't as good as somebody else's logical mind. This isn't a logical problem. And when you're trying to solve a non-logical problem with logic, it comes up short.
It's the wrong tool. Trying to use a screwdriver when you really needed a wrench, something like that. So let's talk about those situations then where logic is the best first approach, okay? These would tend to be those problems that come to you from the world around you. Some individual out there that you're trying to influence or persuade, they are the problem, or the way they think, or their performance. Maybe they work for you or with you, or maybe you work for them, and that's a problem too. Or an event or a circumstance. The more external it seems to be to you, the nature of this problem, out in the world, the more likely you are to want to rely on the mental nature first. Now, again, just as we said, healing a heart requires that you check in with the logic. Being logical requires that you check in on the emotional nature, too.
Yeah, because it could be logical and yet hurt people. I mean, you really have to understand that the heart has to take a look at this. Does it fit for me in terms of my morals and ethics and social codes? Does it feel good to do this? But there are so many things where we can use deductive reasoning, where we can use logic, where we can figure out the right answer to the way to do things, especially when it, as Michael was saying, deals with other people or other circumstances, because logic is sort of the universal language. We all are humans think alike. When we are using logical thinking, used similarly. Logic is sort of logic. So it's a way of like speaking the same language as other people you're dealing with. So coming up with the logical right answer is usually something where you're creating a communication between people. So when it's impersonal, when it's not about you, when it's about solving things that are happening out there, when it's choosing to make changes in the world and that influence other people, then figure if they're going to look at it the same way you are, logically, then that's what they would come up with, and you can create win-win scenarios. Frequently, when it involves other people, the logical thing to do is what everybody expects to happen, and when that does happen, people feel good about it. So it's wonderful as a tool to use when you're solving problems. Like, there are math problems that can be solved with logic alone. But finance problems can't be solved with logic alone, because finance problems always involve the emotions of whoever's money it is. So you have to look at both sides of the equation. I mean, there are some things that are pure logic, like I said, math problems, or some maybe physics problems. But most things, even if logic is the approach to take to solving them, you still have to check in with the emotions. You still have to check in with does this logical decision feel good? And if it doesn't feel good, that doesn't mean give up logic and now go for an emotional decision. It means change the logical decision a little bit, modify it until it does feel good. Because you can have both. You can have something that is logical that feels good, as well as having something that's logical that doesn't feel good. So check in. Does it feel right? Does it feel cogent? Does it feel coherent? Does it feel elegant inside of myself?
Here's an approach to problem solving that Steve and I have used for decades, going all the way back. And that's to ask yourself the question, do I know what I want? And if you do, well, we have one strategy. You might say, well, I don't need to make a decision if I know what I want. Well, yeah, you do. There still are the decisions that need to be made about the journey. Remember, it's the journey, not the destination. Knowing what you want is essential to beginning. You got to have a direction to move in. Otherwise, you're just running away from what you don't want. And that's not a goal. So to have a goal or a desired outcome in mind is a nice first step, but there will be decisions to make along the way. Do I know what I want? We'll talk about this strategy. And then, well, what if, no, I don't know what I want? Sometimes I think I do, but then I'm not so sure. I mean, I sort of know what I want, but I don't know that I know what I want. What are you going to do with that stuff? Well, we have a strategy for that as well. This sort of takes us back toward the emotional, but first things first. Let's talk about decision-making when the problem is, how do I get to this goal or the solution, this desired outcome? Let's talk first about, yes, those situations where I do know what I want. How do we proceed?
Well, of course, you start with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey always said. You start with the idea of where do you want to end up? What's your result? What's your desired outcome? And once you know that, then what you must do is figure out the way to get there. Now, that always comes, I think, with the process of programming the mind. What you're really doing is, now you know the outcome. You already know where you want it to get to. Now, how you get it there is simply a process of getting the mind to take the steps necessary to do it. So we always talked for, as you said, decades now about using the 4 Ps of programming the mind. That is, you imagine what you do want. That's the positive P. And you imagine you've already got it right now, because to the subconscious mind, time doesn't mean anything. If you think it's going to happen in the future, it'll always be in the process of going to happen in the future. It's got to be happening now. You must imagine what you do want as if you've already got it. And then the next one is persistence or perseverance or practice. You've got to do it over and over and over again. How many times do you have to imagine what you do want as if you've already got it? Many, many times, but The number, of course, is determined by the fourth P, the most important of all the Ps, and that is passion. You imagine what you do want is if you've already got it over and over again with great passion. The more passion, the fewer necessary repetitions. The less passion, the more necessary repetitions. In fact, with enough passion, sometimes one repetition is enough to change you forever. And without passion, hundreds and hundreds of repetitions isn't enough to change you at all. So it's a matter of imagining what you do want, positive, if you've already got it, present tense, over and over again, practice, 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 with great passion, real or imaginary. Because one of the cool things about the subconscious mind is it doesn't know the difference. So if you're not really passionate, just fake it till you make it. Just pretend you are. Frequently, we have to pretend before we tend. So no matter how passionate you happen to be, pretend you're even more passionate than that. Act as if you're an actor and here's your script. It calls for you to play a part of a person who is really passionate. Act as if. Because, what you're doing is you're saying, I want to be this instead of this. And if I was this instead of this, I really would be passionate. So imagine what you do want, positive, as if you've already got it, present tense, over and over and over again, practice with great passion. And that's how you program your mind. And then what you need to do is simply take the next step. And if the next step seems too big or too overwhelming, then break it down into smaller, littler steps and take one little step. Because the hardest part of accomplishing anything, once you've made the decision, you know what you want, that first step, going from not moving toward moving, that going from stuck to moving forward, going from an object at rest to becoming an object in motion, or as one of your great mentors said, the hardest part about moving the refrigerator is getting it unstuck from the floor. Once we have that first step where we want to take, then what we must do is gather all of our passion and get the momentum and get the excitement and get the enthusiasm and take that first step. Because once we take a step in the direction of what we want the most, we're way more likely to take a next step in that direction than we are to rock back to our initial position.
Yeah, I call that preparing to receive rather than making it happen. I think knowing what you want and believing that you can do this and have this, create this result with great passion, those are the first two steps, as you've just said. And then others might say, now go make it happen. Well, I think you just did make it happen if you never took any action at all. The action step is necessary, however. I just have always taught this is the action step necessary to receive a done deal. I mean, it's sort of like, you've got the tracking slip and you go on the internet to see where the package is. You know it's coming. UPS or FedEx has it. They always deliver. It's on its way. It'll be here, in a different time, in a different place, but it's coming. That's the attitude of the action step, right? If you think of, well, I got a nice clear idea and a strong passion, but what really makes it happen is this physical effort, well, you're going to fall into the pool of normal, average, common people. Really, really wonderfully successful women and men are the ones who emphasize the first two bits, which is a clear, specific vision of what they want and that unshakable passion, that faith, that belief that's in all of our mythology, whether you wish upon a star or wish before you blow out a birthday candle or Peter Pan telling you, well, you can fly if you really, really believe you can. That's in our mythology over and over and over again. In the West, in the Middle East, and the East, you see those same truths about the power of the mind reinforced by the power of the heart. And then you go take those action steps. That's the formula, all right, for creating the outcomes that you want, provided you know what you want. But let's look now at those situations where you're really not sure. Or maybe you have no idea whatsoever. Maybe you wouldn't recognize the solution or the goal if it was right in front of you. I mean, you might already have the outcome that would work best, and you don't even know it yet. These are situations we have to approach a little bit differently. When we don't know what we want, logic isn't going to work. Because what is logic? It's essentially breaking something that's big down into little pieces. so as to understand it, like you would factor a algebra problem or deduct checks you've written to balance your checkbook, or order from a menu by mentally eliminating what you don't want to pare it down to just a couple of things and then choosing from that. These are all deductive or takeaway processes. But you have to have something to break down or take away. If you have no idea what you want, then all the admonitions in the world about be logical, you got to think rationally and be reasonable, aren't going to apply because you don't know what you want. So in this case, what you're going to have to do to make the decision about the goal, the solution, the result, the desired outcome, is sit receptively and pull upon your intuition. Now, not your instinct. There is something called instinct. It's a little further down the spine, more toward the bottom of the spine, and it's usually fear-based. It's more of an animal herd response, that instinct, like you hear a noise and your head suddenly snaps around, like a deer when it hears a twig snap and suddenly it's aware of your presence. That would be instinct. Now, intuition is more emotional and very human. It's in the stomach, or sometimes tends even toward the heart. It's almost a loving kind of a feeling. And we touched on it when we talked about healing hearts in the first part of today's program. The intuitive nature is largely emotional, and it comes not from conscious logic, but the subconscious mind.
Yeah, when you're looking to find out the answer to that personal question, like what do I want, and you understand that you're the only place that the answer can come from or through, then you need to sit quiet and receptive. You need to get the external world out of your head, because as long as there's stuff going on out there, even if the answer were to come through as one of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 thoughts that go through your mind at any given time, you probably wouldn't notice it. What you need to do is get out of this world and into paradise, into that place where the external world, what your actually 5 senses are perceiving, goes away. You've closed your eyes, you've tuned your ears inward, you're listening to you. You ask yourself the question, what is it that I want? Or I like the question, what do I want the most? Because that's much more clear. What do I want the most? And then I listen for the answer. And sometimes the answer comes immediately, and sometimes it comes a few moments later, and sometimes it comes minutes later. Sometimes it comes in a picture. Sometimes it comes as a whispered words in my. Sometimes it comes as just a knowing, like aha kind of thing, as Michael was talking about earlier. It comes in lots of ways. Sometimes it doesn't come the first time I ask. Sometimes it comes like the second or third time or fourth time I ask. And sometimes it doesn't come while I'm asking, but I'm walking down the street one day and I notice something and that triggers it. Like my mind's on alert for this thing. The law of attraction is taking over here, and I'm noticing anything that relates to this. So the idea, though, is simply to understand the answer is going to come from within me. Now, if you believe in a higher power, as most people in the world do of some sort or another, then we can have the feeling that this thing comes through us. There's something bigger, grander. The is and it's all like we're just attracting to us what we need to hear. But even if you don't believe in any kind of higher power, you still got to understand it comes from you, not from the outside world, but from that subconscious mind, that higher consciousness. Not from the logical deduction, what's on the menu and eliminating what it isn't to decide what it is, but that place where you sit down and you close your eyes and you ask yourself, what am I hungry for? What am I in the mood for? What would taste really good right now? I mean, Einstein said, logic will take you from A to B. If you know where you are and where you want to be, then logic's great. But he also said imagination will take you everywhere. So, logic will take you just from A to B. That's the only place you can go. But imagination will take you everywhere else. And when you don't know where A, or especially where you don't know what B is, you got to rely on imagination. And the wonderful thing about imagination is it's always available to you when you're not stressed. You have to get out of stress. When you're stressed, your mind thinks that this stuff I'm stressed about is more important than my imagination. The survival instinct takes over, instinct you're talking about. But when we get out of stress, when we go to paradise, then imagination becomes the most powerful part of our mind.
You're talking about higher power, and it reminds me that there's essentially 2 schools of thought around the idea of prayer. One reminds me of the line from the Doors tune. Jim Morrison sings, "You cannot petition the Lord with prayer." There is that school of thought that prayer is about petitioning God, moving God, influencing God, asking for divine intervention. And it could be a high school football game, but there's a bunch of people over here that think God will intercede on your side. And, of course, I guess some equally religious people on the other team that are doing the same thing. But then there's this other school of thought that says, no, prayer works not because it moves God, but because it moves you into some sort of alignment, perhaps, into a path of least resistance spiritually that affects you and opens you to some spiritual power, some sort of raw energy that becomes available when you open yourself in this way. Well, choose whatever belief system or combination of systems that works for you. But that reflection, whether you call it prayer, meditation, introspection, Steve and I call it narrow awake, or going to paradise. This series is finding yourself in that paradise place. Finding yourself in paradise is realizing that you're so much more than most people are used to thinking of themselves as being, that it constitutes a whole new self, a higher self, an elevated perspective that reveals the beautiful love-based self. The ego, as you know, is very fear-based. So where do you find that self? Well, call it what you want. Contemplation, reflection, meditation, prayer. Opening you receptively to an enhanced flow. I mean, it's not unlike opening the faucet. The more you open the faucet, what are you doing? You're lowering the resistance to that flow of water. You don't have to urge the water to come forth. You don't have to pull the water out. There's a pressure behind it. Same thing with a dimmer switch. You know, when you turn a light switch that has a dimmer on it, when you make the light dimmer, you're increasing the electrical resistance. To make the light brighter, you turn it in a clockwise direction and you lower the resistance. So here comes more electricity and the light gets brighter. Well, consider there's a valve in your brain that is similar. A system that in hypnosis has been called the reticular activating formation. And as you get anxious and stressed and nervous and think negatively about all the things you cannot do and all the reasons you cannot have what you want, you create a resistance to the flow of insight and understanding, creativity, and this whole aha process we've been talking about. But the beauty is, if you take a breath and as you exhale, feel a letting go, that sense of safety and relaxation, that inner peace, opens you. It lowers your resistance and thereby enhances, by all accounts, this flow of inspiration. You're much more likely to see the solution and to feel it strongly. So when you don't have any idea what to do, trying real hard is just going to make it worse. Relaxation is the secret to concentration and opening yourself to a maximum flow of this creative and many would say spiritual energy.
Again, it's how you guide this energy. You know, I remember listening, 35, 40 years ago to a wonderful prosperity preacher, Reverend Ike, and he said, people pray to God for a Cadillac. He goes, they're wasting their prayers. They don't make Cadillacs in heaven. They make them in Detroit. What you want to pray for is the ability to go out and earn a living and buy a Cadillac. What you want to pray for is things that you aspire to, not things, but qualities. A prayer like, give me more money, you know, well, there's a part of your mind that goes, well, that's selfish. You didn't earn it, you know, and you got all this resistance. A prayer to make me more compassionate, there's no part of your mind that says, no, I don't want to be. Make me more loving, make me more healthy, make me more happy. Those kinds of prayers, there's no resistance to.
Make me more generous and more grateful.
Yeah, those kinds of aspirations, the mind like loves the idea of moving in that direction. But give me a bigger stereo system or give me a big screen TV or, I need that Cadillac, you know. Not to say there's anything wrong with Cadillacs or having wonderful big screen TVs, but the bottom line is, when you are praying or meditating or introspecting or reflecting on what you want to have a really high intention. So the bullseye is very clear. I'm aiming for that lifestyle where I can have that big screen TV and drive that Cadillac, but that's the bullseye. That's what I'm aiming at. But what I'm really all about is the journey on the way there, and I'm not attached to that being necessarily the outcome because, gosh, there could be something even better than a Cadillac and even better than that lifestyle I was imagining. And yet there could also be something that doesn't look as good, but boy, has in it the lessons I need to learn to really appreciate the Cadillac and the lifestyle when I do get it. So I want to be free of the suffering that comes with being attached to needing that particular outcome. I just want to know I got to aim at something. I might as well aim at the best possible thing. I might as well go for the gold and enjoy the ride on the way, making new decisions all the time about how can I do this better, how can I enjoy this more, how can I make this journey more compassionate and wonderful and loving.
I think that's a real important point, Steve, and helps break us free from just raw materialism, is to ask yourselves, well, why do I want this nice car? Why do I want the big screen TV? And you go for the feeling. Well, it'll give me peace of mind. It'll allow me to have fun. I'll feel a sense of contentment. I'll be happy. I guess a lot of it just boils down to that would make me happy. Well, take that apart. What is happiness? You got to have a quality of contentment in there too, a certain kind of peace. Otherwise, and don't you know people like this? They seem to have everything that everybody wants. They've got a good income. They've got a nice house. They got a beautiful family. Everything seems to be working for them. And yet, if you know them well, they'll admit to you and you'll recognize there's a little piece missing. There's just some little part of us that is not getting filled or fulfilled, doesn't feel filled up yet. And that's usually a spiritual component. Can religion fill that in? Some people say, yeah, but there's a lot of people that say, no, I tried every religion there was. And I like the spiritual part, but, well, the dogma and the scripture and the ritual and the rules, that wasn't filling me up. But the heart part, the love part, there's something in that love and that peace. And you know, a lot of it is just giving to other people. The gratitude and the generosity, the kindness and the compassion, the recognition that you really are not an island. You're part of a network, a family that is humanity. And every human being is your brother or your sister spiritually. You may not know them. They may speak a language that you don't understand. They may seem odd or different to you, but there's folks that you know are in your direct bloodline that seem a little odd and different too. They're in your family. And when you honor that idea from a giving place, the idea of service and good works, you'll find that that last little bit is starting to get filled up, even if only for short periods. With a little practice, it lasts a little longer, feels a little more complete, and in time you find yourself with a silly little grin on your face and a feeling that everything really is okay, just fine. Now you've solved what I think is the biggest problem there is, and that underlies all of our problems, that little bit of discontentment that so many of us feel, in spite of having the appearance of every success around us.
Yeah, it's the shift from making your decisions based on what's best for me to making your decisions based on what's best for me and all concerned. Once you make that shift, like there's never a time when you don't consider the other people involved in the situation. It's just autopilot. You automatically go to what's best for me and us. Then I think you get that growth. You get that piece, that missing piece of feeling connected, being part of everything, feeling the energy going in both ways, coming in to you and going out from you. It's as long as other people, those that are your family, closest people, and then it's expanding out, hopefully, to all of humankind. As soon as that's part of the equation, then every decision you make has that in it. Then you find yourself feeling more connected and feeling more satisfied and feeling more compassionate and understanding, and it really does change everything. We have to start with what's best for me, but it can be left there, and most people spend their whole lives leaving it right there, what's best for me, and never moving on to that really fulfilling step of how do I make my decisions based on what's best for me and all the others concerned.
So let's do an audio journey, and we'll practice a couple of these techniques. We'll review them for you in the very level of mind that we're encouraging you to use for all of the tools, the techniques, and skill sets that we talk about in this personal empowerment series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Let's go to paradise.
One of my favorite parts of every show, because, for all the years we did this together on the radio, we couldn't do this part. We couldn't do the guided imagery part. I love this part of the program, and I'm sure you do too. So it always starts with closing your eyes, taking a deep breath or two or three, slowly, consciously tuning into the internal world, noticing what feels really nice as you relax and find yourself in paradise.
Allow any distractions that occur to you to bubble up and drift away. If they feel like you're doing something wrong, let go of that too. For it's perfectly natural for the mind to try to take you back to a busy place. That's why this is a practice. Breathe, let go, and allow yourself to feel safe and relaxed. And little by little, those distractions will be fewer and fewer in number. For concentration is never an effort. To focus your attention gently is a matter of allowing it to settle. Quietly, peacefully, feeling yourself, becoming emotionally more calm, and mentally, it just gets a little more quiet.
And as you find yourself in paradise, one thing becomes quite clear. That any time there's a big decision to make, you got to come back here. Come to this place, this quiet space, where you can give it all of your mind, free of any distractions. When you do this, you will find that you can bring to this problem much more attention and much more ability to understand. With all the rest of the world blocked out, this problem is in your command. And you can determine, is this a problem that I can approach with logic, or is this more a feeling I need to explore? Is this something where I do know what I want, or is it something else? Is it something more? Like maybe I have no idea what I want or what I need to do. Is it problem number one, or is it problem number two? So in this place, in this quiet space, it's easy to explore what's the first step you need to take, and then what's the next step, and more.
And if the decision you need to make is more about healing your heart than solving a problem, find the fear and face it. You're made for this. So if some part of you feels inadequate, just tell yourself that's probably a false assumption. And it probably comes from childhood. And you don't have to agree. You can disagree with that false assumption. Remind yourself, as I'm suggesting here, this is what you're made for, facing fear. It's who you are and what you do. It could easily be argued that it's why you're here. To face fear is to look directly at what confuses you, anything that you don't understand. And what more appropriate response than to look directly into the face of what you have yet to understand, so that you might understand it better. And that understanding, that recognition or realization, solves the problem. The hurt vaporizes. The anger, the sadness, the depression, the angst, the animosity, whatever its name, will cease to be as you understand it, in little bits and pieces, or sometimes all at once, gently like the dawning of an insight, or sometimes all at once as if thunderstruck and the top of your head seems to just explode with recognition and realization, and you've healed the broken heart. Through understanding, making a decision to understand is to sit open and receptive to a solution that awaits discovery. In fact, I'd have you consider that whether it's a problem that you approach mentally or a broken heart that you approach emotionally, that the solution is always contained within. That if you have an awareness of a problem, know that the solution is within it. As surely as the seeds of a fruit or a vegetable are contained within that fruit or vegetable, so that it can procreate and continue and roll out into the future. It contains the seeds of its own destiny, and so do your problems. Your problems are the seedlings of a future reality. You must face them to harvest those seeds and allow the solutions to be born from a direct confrontation. Be not afraid. Face the fear emotionally. Make a decision. If it feels like risking, do it anyway. Step forward. Courage is not the absence of fear, so much as it's the willingness to face the fear and step directly into it.
So face the fear, and then get clear that the decision you're making is based on love. You found the fear, and you allowed it to clear, and you've let yourself rise above. So this decision is based not on fear, but on what feels the very best. Ask yourself, first question, make that the initial test. Is this fear-based or love-based as a decision? And once you're clear, it's based on love and not on fear, then you can move and imagine what you do want. Imagine what you want as if it's already true, as if it's already now, as if it's happening to you, and imagine it over and over and over again. I mean, inside your mind, you just simply pretend it is true. And each time you do, allow as much passion as possible to just come right on through. Imagine what you do want as if it's now true, over and over again. And what you must do is put as much passion into the imagination as you are capable of being able to create. The more passion, the more likely your mind thinks this is great. And the more great your mind thinks, the more powerfully it does feel, the more quickly your mind is going to make it come real. So, imagine what you do want as if it's already true, over and over again, with great passion too, and that's what it takes to focus the mind, to take the next step into the dreams that you'll find will come true. when you use these 4 Ps as we've taught you to do.
And feel like a winner as if it's already done. Like it's headed your way via UPS or FedEx. It's guaranteed. You got the tracking slip. You know it's on its way. It'll be here soon. You may not even know how, but you don't need to. You know that the universe is conspiring to support your dreams, your goals and solutions, because they're always for the greater good of all concerned, not merely you. You're part of the greater good of all concerned. You're part of that bigger group and will always benefit. And with that orientation, take a nice, slow, deep breath, filling your lungs. Hold as you peak and sense the fullness, and now, as you exhale slowly, open your eyes, wide awake, back in the room, feeling fine, rested, alert, refreshed, and carrying with you effortlessly that wonderful, positive, filled-up affect of, oh boy, I still may not even know how I'm going to do it, but I know that I'm going to do it. And that sure was a nice exercise of feeling like I've already done it.
Yeah, making good decisions is wonderful, and making bad decisions can be great too, because you can learn from your mistakes. It's not making decisions that gets you into big problems, and accepting the prior decisions you'd made a while back as being necessarily the right decisions for now. So take a look at some of those decisions you made about dentists or flying insects or Brussels sprouts or whatever. Maybe it's time to re-explore and make different decisions about the way you want your world to be today.
We want to thank you for listening, invite you and encourage you to join us next week. If someone has forwarded this program to you, consider subscribing for less than $4 a month at FocusedPassion.com. 99 cents a show, $3.96 a month. Some months you get a free program. There's 5 programs in there 4 times a year. You get an extra program. $3.96 a month on your credit card, your debit card, your ATM card. FocusedPassion.com. Somebody reminded me the other day they were using this as a business expense. He said it's not a lot of money, but it adds up, and I write it off as a business expense. I get that much valuable information about problem solving like today, about stress management, about how to manage other people, relationships, and this is very definitely a business expense. I'd have you consider that too. And I hope you're one of those who's planning to join us for the Maui Mindfulness Retreat. There's still 3 spots open, and you could have one of them, or you and your spouse could have 2 of them, if you give us a call or send us an email now. Again, that's coming up February 13 through 18, 2011. Check FocusedPassion.com. You see a big, colorful Maui Retreat button. Click on that, and all the information is right there. Hope to see you in beautiful Nahiku, Maui, in a couple of weeks. Again, thanks for being here. As always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.